So a lot of people ask, how strong do you need to be to start doing strongman? Short answer, there's not really a minimum. Contests are not gonna post something like, you must be this strong to compete. That's the whole point. You're going out there, you're competing, whoever's stronger is stronger. There's no minimum. Of course, there are some regionals or national comps that might require you to qualify for them based on your performance at an earlier competition, but they're not going to tell you no if you don't have a 405 deadlift or anything like that. Of course, that's not really what people are asking when they ask that question, is it? What you really want to know is, how strong do I have to be to go to a strongman competition and not embarrass myself? You know, to really belong there. Last thing I want to do is go do a max deadlift event and find out that my deadlift is 100 pounds lighter than everyone else's. That's just embarrassing. If this is you, my advice is to get out of your own head a little bit. At a local strongman competition, the only people watching are other competitors, your mom, and other competitors' moms. Most people are there to see one specific person, and that's the only one they care about. They might see 50, 60 athletes go up and try to lift the same log or deadlift on the same bar. And during the other 59, they're on their phones scrolling, and they don't care about you. Hate to say it, but nobody cares about you enough to judge you. And in my opinion, and this opinion is shared by a lot of other strongman competitors, anyone, regardless of where your strength level is, anyone who's putting themselves out there and competing is worthy of respect and admiration for doing so. So, if you're worried about embarrassing yourself because you're not as strong as you might like to be, just get out of your own head. All that said, I know that's not the answer you wanted to hear. You want me to tell you where you need to be so that you're not going to zero events in the novice division. You're not going to go out, drop $7,500, whatever competition registration fee is, just to not be proud of your performance. And I can understand that. So, I'm going to give you some numbers. And I just want to emphasize before I give you these numbers, these are approximate. I don't want anyone to hear these numbers, realize they're short of them, and decide not to compete as a result of that, if they really wanted to compete otherwise. I also don't want you to think that if you're well beyond this, you're a shoo-in to win the novice competition. You never know when an offensive lineman in the NFL doesn't get signed to a new team after his contract ends and decides he wants to now pursue strongman. And of course, because it's his first contest, he signs up for the novice class, even though he's clearly significantly stronger than you. Step 1, figure out your max deadlift. Now, you are allowed to use lifting straps for this because you're allowed to use lifting straps in strongman. Get a standard barbell 9 inches off the ground, which if you put normal 45-pound plates on, that's about how high you should be. You can figure out a 1 rep max by actually maxing out your deadlift, or by doing a heavy weight that is difficult for you to do and doing as many reps as possible. And there are a number of resources online that'll allow you to plug in the weight and the number of reps you did to failure and figure out an estimated 1 rep max. Bear in mind, these are not always 100% accurate, but the fewer reps you are able to do, the more accurate it's going to be. Figuring out a 1 rep max based on something you did for 12 reps is a lot harder than, say, something you did for 2 or 3 reps. Second, in similar manner, you're going to want to figure out a max squat. You should be squatting at least to parallel. In powerlifting, the rule is generally below parallel, but in strongman, the rule is typically parallel if there is a squat of it. And finally, perform a barbell overhead press. Now for this, you are allowed to use leg drive or to use a jerk technique because you are generally allowed to use these in strongman. Again, you want to figure out your max either by pressing a max weight or doing a heavy weight for reps and figuring out your estimated 1 rep max based off of that. Once you have these 3 numbers, you want to add up the total. For men, you want to be looking at about 1,000 pounds to have a reasonable assurance that you shouldn't zero any events. And for women, you want to have about 600 pounds. Now again, these are variable. A lot of contests are ran by some dude bros who don't really know what they're doing and set the weights way too heavy. And on the flip side, I don't want anyone to hear these numbers, realize they're short of them, and decide that that's the reason that they're not going to compete when they wanted to otherwise. Like I said before, there is no minimum. And if you're okay with zeroing an event or two, absolutely jump in. Anyone who does strongman long enough is going to embarrass themselves at some point. So you might as well get over it. Additionally, I do not recommend achieving these numbers and then jumping into a contest the following week. You should take 10 to 12 weeks training the actual events that you are going to be competing in as closely as you can mimic them. If you can't afford a strongman gym because the membership is expensive, I get that. But if you can afford it, be honest with yourself and shell out. Because no amount of barbell overhead press is ever going to prepare you for how awkward a log is. No amount of squats are ever going to prepare you for how heavy a yoke feels as soon as you put it on your back and you realize, hey, 1.5 times my squat max is heavy. It's also important to understand if you are short of these numbers, you can get stronger. In fact, most people who are brand new to the sport progress at a much faster rate than those who are experienced. Because a lot of your shortcomings may just be from bad form or improper technique, and you are a lot stronger than you think you are. And if you start doing the movement correctly, you'll see that in what you're able to lift. Additionally, as I'm going to cover in a future video, most people are training in a way that is not optimal to improve their strength. In fact, it's not uncommon for people to add up to 100 pounds to each of these barbell lifts within their first year of doing actual dedicated strength training.
Thank you for watching. This has been part 2 of my 10-part Intro to Strongman series. And once again, please consider subscribing if you found this useful or entertaining or interesting. It means a lot to me, and I'll catch you in the next one.